Hello everyone and welcome to another cyber security video, this time with an emphasis on digital workspace. I'm Kieron Newsham, the Chief Technologist of Cybersecurity, and I have my wonderful friend and colleague with me, Jack Lewis. Jack, do you want to give a quick intro, mate?
Sure thing. So hi everybody, I'm Jack Lewis, Softcat's Chief Technologist for Digital Workspace. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to you today, Kieron.
Oh, it's my pleasure, my friend. Got a couple of questions for you, mate. First one, it's one that I know you're particularly passionate about. We in cyber tend to nail endpoints specifically with a load of stuff, and it has been known to impact user experience. There's a line, obviously. How do you best tread it, mate, in your opinion, in terms of user experience versus security?
There's probably a bit more to it than just user experience.
Okay.
So security controls, products that you end up installing on the endpoint, etc., absolutely will impact end user experience.
Yep.
But they also have a wider impact on things like productivity, because if they are impacting the device's performance, that might mean apps load and work a hell of a lot slower than they normally should do.
Yep.
It might also cause conflicting agents, device crashes, that sort of thing, which is ultimately going to impact end user productivity. We've also seen as well, depending on the type of controls that you're installing and the way that you configure them, data loss prevention type tools can also impact collaboration and communication capabilities as well.
Blocking.
Yeah, which can be frustrating for end users, especially if they're interacting directly with customers and they've got a legitimate reason why they might want to share something. So if we think about it as productivity, experience, and the ability to communicate and collaborate effectively internally and externally can be impacted as a result of maybe legacy approaches to security and too many agents. The best way to go about this is probably to take a data-driven approach to figure out what is actually causing those problems so that you can identify some quick wins and then maybe replace and modernize some of those agents that are impacting those three key things.
Yep.
Now, there are some tools out there. We classify them as DEX tools, so digital employee experience tools. It's another agent. You install it on the device. Unfortunately, it is another agent. But that agent is then able to identify trends and ultimately produce a report that is from the user's perspective, because workspace is what the user interacts with on a day-to-day basis to get the job done. Therefore, it will tell you these are the 3 or 4 things that you need to do that are going to have huge impact on increasing productivity, experience, and the ability to collaborate and communicate, whilst also maybe not requiring too much effort. And then it will also help you identify the more transformational stuff as well, which may or may not be security related. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't.
The other area where we typically have a lot of cross, mate, is identity.
Sure.
We've seen quite a lot of changes within the last 12 months. So Microsoft, it was probably viewed as a rebrand in terms of Active Directory and Azure Active Directory to Entra ID.
Yeah.
But as we know, it's more building a central identity ecosystem that's easier to integrate with, a centralized focal point, and adds a load of added benefits that Microsoft have started to develop since they released it in July last year, 2023 that is. What changes, if any, do you expect that to pose on us as an industry between cyber and workspace? And how is Softcat dealing with that as well? Are we doing anything specific?
Yeah, sure. So this is, I would say, probably number 1 or 2 in terms of conversations that are popular that I have with customers on a weekly or day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Identity's table stakes, right? From security, but also from a how do I access my stuff as effectively as possible. So there's a productivity and a cybersecurity story here, and we've got to get the balance right. What we find is that if organisations can adopt technologies like Entra ID effectively, and other technologies of course do exist in the form of Okta and other identity access management cloud-based solutions, what that provides is the ability for you to effectively do single sign-on into your applications that exist both inside and outside your network.
Yep.
So that might include some line of business app that you're still reliant on, maybe an old CRM application that's mission critical, but it also could include things like, I don't know, Office 365, Salesforce, your HR applications. So that could be Workday, for example.
Yep.
Now, that's the table stakes stuff, making sure that your users aren't having to remember a separate set of credentials.
Yep.
Customers, from a maturity perspective, are getting there. So the understanding of why that's important and how to do it has been building over the last few years, but we still do run into customers large and small that still haven't got that right.
Yep.
And that might be a legacy thing where, we talk to large universities that over the years, like 25 years ago, built their own version of Active Directory and have still got that behind the scenes. Yeah. Large enterprise customers that maybe aren't in that exact same position but are still reliant on their own premises Active Directory to do Kerberos, NTLM type authentication. But the world's moved on since then, and of course customers are starting to adopt web-based technologies that can't work with these legacy authentication protocols. So getting that right is number one. We can absolutely help customers with that, whether it's selling them product or services to help with capacity capability, to get them into this better state. The great thing about that is, so single sign-on's the first step.
Yep.
And this stuff's been available in products like Entra ID when it was known as Azure Active Directory for a little while now. But you can then wrap conditional access rules, and this is where we talk about modernising the way that you do security, which allows you to raise your resilience recovery without impacting or having minimal impact on end user productivity, and also the other stuff, experience, collaboration, communication capabilities. And that is, if we are able to do effective single sign-on, single digital identity access management platform, we can then write conditional access rules that pull data from things like a mobile device management service, like let's say Intune.
Yep.
They will then check the posture of the device. Is it showing signs of compromise? If it is, don't issue the access token to the end user until that threat has been remediated. If it is compliant, not showing signs of compromise, and the user, based on some artificial intelligence processing, is probably who they say they are, because it will learn behaviours over time, then issue them with an access token. You're almost like an attestation process where it goes, right, does the identity look right? If yes, move on to the next thing. Does the device look right? And that's the story here, the fact that we can get all these integrations, but ultimately it's the identity access layer that's going to control whether you gain access to those capabilities or not. There's also some really cool things that we've seen as well, where if confidence isn't as high as we need it to be, you could then proxy some of that traffic, monitor it, prevent copy and paste potentially. So that's a way of effectively walking that line between, we know that our users still need to be productive. There is some anomalous behaviour, so let's maybe monitor it, and then if we start to identify that something's happening here that is definitely out of character, then we can kill the connection, and then ultimately it's up to IT to then remediate it.
That makes total sense, mate. Yeah, the posturing thing, I mean, we've tried as organisations, I think, to look at better ways of working, whether that be working from anywhere, enabling that, whether it be trying to do workforce diversification in terms of work from anywhere can increase our productivity, but also it means I can recruit talent from different areas. What about bring your own device? What about allowing that? And there's always been like a security kind of line running through it. And I think what we're tending to see, and I totally agree with you, by the way, is we're catching up in terms of you can actually build the security in so that you want frictionless access. That's pretty much what everyone wants. But we can build the security into that, and some of the things that you mentioned there around Intune, Entra, conditional access, really good examples in the Microsoft ecosystem of what they're doing and how we've got customers taking advantage of that.
And they allow you to get that. It's always a balance, right? That balance between security and productivity. If you turn all the security controls up to 10, ultimately, yes, your exposure levels are going to be lower, and the likelihood of you suffering an attack is probably going to be reduced, but ultimately so is the productivity. So you get to a point where we've got to get this back into balance, and I think we've seen with a lot of organisations, maybe it's because of GDPR or the regulations, security controls, they have got that balance maybe slightly wrong, where the security controls are definitely impacting workforce and workspace capabilities. So now's the time to maybe readdress that and modernise, because the capabilities do exist. We speak to large and small organisations all the time. The ones that are on the far end of the maturity spectrum are very resilient, so they're able to protect against the attacks, but they also have the ability to recover should those attacks take place, and also back themselves because operationally they're mature. They know that they'll identify that, reduce the scope, but they'll do that without impacting end user productivity, which is key here.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining me, mate. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Kieron.
Really good chat. And more importantly, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon.